Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of r/ProRevenge. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you've got notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. Emotionally abusive sister loses job because I move. Little bit of background, I am the second youngest of 8 and my siblings are my half-siblings on my mother's side. I didn't grow up with them and my mother. In my adult years is when I started getting involved with them. That's when I realized how crappy they actually are. I dropped out of college and lived with my eldest sister for a few months before going back to my childhood home, which was being foreclosed on because my brother never paid the mortgage. My grandmother left him the house since she had moved. It was my dad's, but he passed. The house was supposed to go to me since I was his only child, but I was too young at the time, so it went to my grandmother. It was sad to see that I was going to be losing my childhood home because my brother stole money my other siblings had given him for the mortgage and ran off. And I wish this was about him, but I never see him anymore. The story. Enter my eldest sister, who is an entitled parent of all things, and her crotch fruit was also an entitled spawn, who moved into the home to save money during the foreclosure. Since it would take a few years, we all decided to stay as long as we could. Now my eldest sister, who grew up having to take care of our other siblings, not me because I lived with my dad and stepmom, is still stuck in this mindset that I'm a child and have to do whatever she said, especially because she helped me out. I had lived with her for a few months before I moved back home. She's the type to go, "Oh, I helped you, so now you have to help me." And of course I did because I felt obligated. She had also helped me to get a job at her job. I appreciated all of this, but things started going downhill from there. We were all saving money. She told me I'd have to stay with her since I wouldn't be able to get one on my own. I believe this. I'm a new adult and still stuck in the little sister pushover mode, and my sister knows this. Anyway, I've saved $100 or more from every paycheck because we were going to put down a down payment for a house in a while. The abuse she gave me started getting bad. My sister is really trashy, and whenever I did something outside of my race, she'll claim, "Why are you acting like another race?" I'm pro-choice, so she would make fun of me being pro-choice. She hated the fact that I loved my dog more than her kids. She had another baby, Lord knows she couldn't afford another one, and she used to talk shit about my dog. She would take my phone and read through my messages. I'd have naughty messages to my boyfriend, and she'd try to kink shame me. She'd make fun of my depression and suicide attempts and make me feel like I was nothing without her, even though she'd constantly ask me for money out of my personal savings and made me believe it was for baby food, but it was actually for the devil's lettuce. Not sure what we can get away with saying here, so I'm just gonna refrain from the W word. She actually went into my room and stole $80 from me for that Swedish chiba. She eventually paid it back, but still, I'd ask her not to smoke in my room because I have asthma, and she'd still come in with a cigarette or a joint. If I spent money on myself, she'd be like, "You know we need to save money." Yet she spends $400 on Christmas gifts her spawn would never use. When we worked together, she got pissed off and jealous when my coworkers praised me and used to try and talk shit about me behind my back. She was my ride, and we were always late for work because her excuse was, "I have kids. I need to get them ready for school and daycare." I was happy to see that my bosses never really wrote me up because of her wrongdoings. My manager and supervisor even told me that she was only still hired because I work there. That made me feel good about myself because I feel worthless a lot of the times. The abuse got so much worse, and one incident that happened I don't want to talk about right now made me think, I am an adult. I am not a child anymore. She needs to realize that. I hid my money, started being more strict with her entitled child, and whenever she would try to dish me some abuse, I'd dish it back. Enough of it. I decided that I was going to move away from the toxicity that was her and the rest of my family. I took the rest of my money and put down a down payment for a car. Of course, her reaction was irate. "You know we need to move." I didn't care. I had already planned on moving cities. 2 days later, her car breaks down and wasn't able to be repaired. If it wasn't for me getting a car, she wouldn't have been able to get to work. During this whole thing, I was still a bit of a pushover, and decided to let her use my car for things, especially since I wasn't driving as much. I had nowhere to go and was a new driver. Of course, she would bring the car back low on gas and demand I help pay for gas, though she was the one who was using the car. She let her spawns make a mess out of my car and never cleaned it out. The kid broke the back seat off because she kept kicking it. She even brought roaches into the car. The last straw was when she started talking shit about me while in my car. She was supposed to be helping me learn how to drive in exchange for me letting her use the car all the damn time. She was on the phone with her friend and I was listening to music. I was switching through songs and heard her talking. Yeah, she wants me to help her learn how to drive, but I got stuff to live for. I got kids. She has her dog. She thinks that that's someone to live for. Well, I can drive home alone and you can get a ride from your baby daddy. This pisses her off and I proceed to put my music on, but I can still hear her talking shit. Enough is enough. We finally get the eviction notice and my sister gets upset when I tell her I'm moving to another city and not with them. I wasn't going to help her rent a house while she has a baby daddy to help her. She's angry and annoyed, but I don't care. She is downing me and saying I wouldn't make it. I put in my 2 weeks, my manager and supervisor says they'll give me a great recommendation for my other jobs, and I move to another city. Of course, my manager and supervisor were right. She was fired shortly after I left because she had a shitty attitude and I was gone. She had no ride anymore besides using her baby daddy's van that drinks up gas easily. She won't be getting any good references because she couldn't learn how to be a kind person. I proved her wrong, got an apartment a month after moving to my new city. TLDR, my emotionally abusive stepsister only continued to keep her job because I was there. I was also her only good mode of transportation. After having enough abuse, I leave her with no good mode of transportation and she gets fired after I leave because she only had one more strike left. Oh, it's not your job? It is now! Intro and backstory. My dad was a mechanic for 20 plus years, and for as long as I can remember, I drove him nuts because I'd go around the house with a screwdriver he left out and took everything apart because I wanted to see how it works. As I grew older, I developed an affinity toward computers and electronics, which led me to be that kid in high school who changed his grades, crashed the school's district servers, and used the netsend command with great success. I'd spend my weekends either with my grandparents and uncle working on science projects, or dragging my dad outside to help me fix my car, which consisted of him telling me that he would help once I got it taken apart. Those figure-it-out lessons were probably the greatest gift he could have given me growing up. I joined the U.S. Army in March of 2004 and went into communications, or commo for short, 25U, where I managed to go from PVT E1 when I joined to SGT E5 by the time I returned from my deployment at the beginning of 2007. And yes, I know that's private and sergeant, but I'm going by the exact lettering so that I don't have an HCL repeat. After returning home, I was subsequently transferred from a light infantry unit, walking everywhere, to a mechanized infantry unit, riding around in an armored vehicle everywhere, and placed in charge of the battalion commo shop because the current person running the commo shop was scheduled to retire in a few months and I was the only other NCO. This is where things got interesting and my commo versus mechanics ProRevenge story starts. Commo versus mechanics. As anyone else that was in the U.S. Army can attest to, every Monday is and was motor pool maintenance, which essentially means go make sure all the tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, BFV, or anything else with the motor works the way it should. This included testing all of the radios and communication equipment as well. If it didn't work, we filled out the maintenance forms with the correct shop and would have them fix it. All the issues would later be consolidated into a report that the leadership team would review. If a vehicle was on that report, the leadership team wanted to know why it wasn't fixed. I ran my shop using the same approach my dad taught me, which was, figure it out, and don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution. One Monday morning, shortly after taking charge of the commo shop, one of my soldiers came to me with a problem he couldn't figure out and asked if I could come help him. I agreed and followed him over to the BFV that was giving him problems. After a few hours of troubleshooting, we finally traced the problem to the BFV's slip ring. We double and triple checked that it was indeed the problem because 1. Slip rings in general have a low failure rate, and 2. It wasn't something we could fix on our own. It required help from the mechanics because the slip ring required taking apart the interior of the BFV turret to actually get to it. So, I went to the mechanics to get their help so we could fix the problem. This is when I learned the mechanics didn't like the commo shop. I was essentially told by the motor chief to F off and that the slip ring is a commo issue and it's the commo's shop job to fix it, not theirs. I was pissed at the response and tried to insist we needed his help. However, I was promptly shut down and told to pound sand. At this point, I was beyond pissed. I tried the official way. I even swallowed my pride and asked him nicely. Both times, I was shit on. I decided I was going to play global thermonuclear war and teach him a lesson that neither he nor anyone else in his shop would forget. So I went to my guys and told them I'd be back in about an hour or two because I needed to run home and grab some stuff. When I got home, I went directly for the garage and started packing up all the wrenches, impacts, and sockets that I could fit into my portable toolbox. I also loaded up the portable air compressor and any extension cords I could find and made my way back to the motor pool. Once I got back to the motor pool, I had my guys locate every extension cord they could find around the office because I could only find one in my garage and help me run power to the BFV that we were going to have to fix ourselves. Meanwhile, I also had 2 of the guys run to the HQ and find me 2 of the largest empty coffee cans they could find. I ended up having to tell them twice because the first time they thought I was joking. They couldn't understand why I needed a coffee can of all things. When they returned with coffee cans, I had everything in place. I had power, compressed air, tools, and a place to neatly put all of the bolts, nuts, and washers I was about to remove. Under normal circumstances, I would only remove the things that absolutely had to be removed. The fewer things to put back together, the better. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I had absolutely no intention of putting anything back together. It was about lunchtime, and I decided my way of fixing this issue probably wasn't the best example to set for my team. So I sent them to lunch and told them I'd handle the issue so they could focus on the other vehicles when they got back. For the next few hours, I proceeded to dismantle every single bolt I could find. I removed seats, interior plates, shelves, pretty much anything that wasn't electrical or commo related got removed. I would then place all of the newly removed hardware in the coffee can. By the time I reached the turret, I had filled up both coffee cans with nuts, bolts, and washers, so I had to go find something else to start putting the stuff in. Luckily, we had Ziploc bags by the dozen laying around the office. I grabbed a couple of those and went back to having fun taking apart the BFV. I finally reached the slip ring and managed to luck out. I didn't have to replace the slip ring after all. Turns out the mechanics didn't install one of the cable mounts and one of the commo cables got snagged and subsequently cut. It probably took me less than 15 minutes at that point to replace the cable and missing cable mount. Of course, the fact that I completely removed everything in the way helped because now I didn't have to fish through the cable for anything. Once I replaced the cable and made sure all of the other commo equipment worked, I figured while I had everything taken apart, it'd be much easier to fix any other problems they might have been having. All commo systems checked out. My job was done. Everything that I had taken out of the BFV was then gently and neatly stacked in the interior of the BFV. I put the lids on the coffee cans, zipped up the bags, pulled out my trusty Sharpie, and wrote bolts on each of them. Once everything was tidied up, I went off to find the owner of the BFV and let him know that his commo issue was fixed, but he should probably have a mechanic look at his BFV because I had to disassemble some, and by some I meant most, of the vehicle in order to get the part I needed to replace, and I couldn't remember how everything went back together. I stared out my office window for the rest of the day waiting for the mechanics to get around to looking at the BFV. I still remember the reaction of the motor chief when he looked inside the vehicle, and if I didn't know any better, I could have sworn his head rotated around 3 times and damn near popped off. His reaction was absolutely priceless. I knew he was about to storm into my shop in a fit of rage, so I got up and decided it was probably best to meet him outside in the motor pool. As soon as I reached earshot distance, he started screaming and demanding I put the vehicle back the way I found it. However, I was having none of that. I simply shook my head and told him it was a mechanical issue now, and it wasn't my job. I asked for your help in the beginning and was told no because it wasn't your job. I'm just a commo guy. I didn't know what needed to be removed so I could fix the commo issue in the slip ring, so I removed everything. If someone from your team would have been there, I think this whole misunderstanding could have been avoided. That vehicle remained on the weekly report for the next 3 weeks while they figured out what bolts went where. However, after that incident, I was never told it's not my job ever again, and the mechanics were more than willing to help me fix any issues that came up. By the time I left that unit, we ended up starting to cross-train each other's team members so we could fix things faster as they came up. TLDR, needed help from some mechanics to replace a commo part in a tracked vehicle. Mechanic told me it wasn't his job, so I took the entire vehicle apart, fixed my part, and made the reassembly his job. Well, there you have it, folks. The end of the epics. If you liked these stories, be sure to leave a like on the video as well as subscribe with notifications turned on. That way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. As always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.